Hi there. Welcome to the Zebra Marketing Show, and I'm looking forward to talking with you today about consistent follow up and content. Too often, we as business owners, salespeople, marketers, um, feels like we're having trouble opening doors. The doors we want to open maybe just aren't opening, or not as many of them are opening as we would like to. So, what can we do to help open those doors, help those doors open for us so that it's easier for us to help more people who we can help do more business, get more customers, close more deals so that we can grow our businesses? Today, we're going to talk about why it seems like too often that our conversations are starting cold or starting at zero. And today's live stream is called Why Buyers Respond to Some Outreach and Ignore the Rest. And we're all busy. I'm sure that, your inbox this morning when you came into work was probably jam packed with all kinds of things, people pulling you in every direction, maybe customers requests, maybe support requests, maybe uh, maybe there's things in there that you really didn't want to have to deal with, or maybe there's some spam in there, or newsletters you've subscribed to that you don't really get a chance to read. All kinds of stuff. Our inboxes are very full these days, and not just our inboxes. We're dealing with a very busy online environment these days. There's LinkedIn, there's email, there's websites, there's text messages, there's stuff going everywhere. So sometimes it can feel like an uphill battle just being able to focus. So the question is, in this busy, chaotic environment, how do we get our customers' attention? And how do we keep their attention long enough for them to form an opinion about us? For them to say, yeah, you know what? I think this is the right company that can help me with this problem. Let me give them a call, or let me send them a message, because at the end of the day, it has to be their choice. We can't just clobber them over the head with our offers and expect them to say yes. They have to become aware of what we do, that we exist. They have to form an opinion that what we say we're going to do, we're really going to do, that what we propose as a way to solve the problem is really going to solve the problem. They have to believe, and they have to trust. So it's important for us to build those relationships with people. And today we're going to talk a little bit about how we do that. All right. So my name is Laura Camrath. I am CEO of Zebra Marketing, and we help people. We see people all the time, companies who have incredible products and services, but they need a little bit of help getting those in front of the right people so that they can grow their business, close more deals, and know that they're spending their money effectively for the highest ROI. So we help companies implement digital marketing systems with AI and automation so they can have predictable sales and hockey stick growth. All right. So if you enjoy this conversation today, if this is useful for you, if you find what we're talking about helpful, drop a like, a comment. If you have any questions, feel free to drop them in the comments. I will be back to check the comments and make sure that your questions get answered if you do drop one in the comments. And do share this with your network if this is a useful conversation for you. Maybe there's somebody out there that would benefit from it as well. So please do like, share, comment. Just helps us engage better as a community. All right, so let's jump in here. All righty. Oh, okie dokie. So, why do buyers respond to some outreach and ignore the rest? You know, we would call that maybe spam. People are reaching out to you, people are calling. Maybe you're calling people you would like to do business with, and the door's not opening. The phone's not getting answered. They're not calling you back. Maybe they're ghosting you, heaven forbid. But why is it that sometimes it's easier to get someone's attention than at other times? And when our customer doesn't really know us, the relationship seems to be starting at zero, you know, the door's not opening because they don't know who you are. And the difference between a message that gets a reply and one that gets deleted isn't always the script. It's the foundation of familiarity beneath it. Do they know who you are enough to trust you? If we get an email from a friend, we're probably not going to delete it. We're going to read it. But if we get an email from some spammy weirdo who we don't know who they are, why they're contacting us, we're probably going to click the delete button. So how do we become that trusted friend who they want to read and they want to listen and pay attention to you? So most companies start in the wrong place. When companies think about improving outreach, they almost always focus on the same things. They're thinking about marketing in terms of like their messaging, their scripts, their templates, their connection requests. The what we call the communications part. You know, Marketing exists to move people along the customer journey. And what is the customer journey? The customer journey is basically a journey of trust. It's a journey that takes people all the way from just becoming aware that you exist to actually beginning to engage, and then actually beginning to pay attention, and then actually booking a call, and then actually reviewing a proposal, and then actually becoming a customer. All along the way, the trust is built and that relationship is built. That's the purpose of marketing. And at the very foundation is the customer themselves. Who is the customer? And they are the hero in that movie. They are the main character. So, we tend to think of marketing as just like all the outreach stuff. But why should they care about all of that stuff? First we have to answer that question. Why would anyone care? And that question is foundational to any marketing outreach that you're going to do. So let's talk a little bit more about that. So everything starts with the customer. Before you write a single word of content, before you send your first outreach sequence, before you build an offer even, or launch a campaign, there's one foundational step that determines whether any of it will work. You need to deeply, genuinely understand your customer, not just the job title, their world, like who are they, everything about them, everything about their problems, their needs, their desires. And the problem is oftentimes we as businesses or business owners or marketing departments or technical teams, we start with the offer. We have some cool thing that we are going to sell somebody, so we often start with the offer. Like, oh, we can do this cool technical thing. Oh, we can do this cool um you know software, or we can uh oh, like this is really cool over here. But it all comes back to why. And you know it, the best way really to build an offer is to start with a customer, figure out what they need, and then solve that problem. Whereas oftentimes we start with the offer and then we work backwards. Oh, okay, we have this cool widget. Now let's figure out who we're going to sell it to. But that's really the backwards way, because we really want to start with the customer and then figure out how we're going to build an offer that appeals to them. And so, it really comes down to, at the end of the day, the customer, the customer, the customer. Everything must be customer centric, customer focused. So, if we already have an offer, then we're kind of working backwards. But when you work backwards, you may find that there are unanswered questions. So, if you sell coffee makers and you're selling coffee makers to coffee lovers, but you don't sell coffee filters, and they're over here trying to make a cup of coffee and they're having to go buy filters somewhere else. Well, you just figured out another way to add value to your offer. Why don't you sell coffee filters, or find a partner who you can resell their coffee filters? So I'm just using that as a very, broad, high level, completely unrelated analogy, but you get the idea. If you already have an offer, work backwards and go back to the very basics of what problem does your customer have that we are trying to solve. And you might find that you need to change your offer a little bit to make it really truly solve the customer's problem in a full and complete way. So what we want to answer is, who really is the customer? What role, industry, seniority, daily responsibilities, decision-making authority do they have? Who is it you really need to talk to? Whose problem are you really solving? And then what problem is it? What is the true nature of the problem? What is the real friction that they face? Not the polished version that they'd say in a meeting. Just what is it really that they are dealing with that would have them raise their hand and say, hey, I think you can help me with this. And what are they trying to achieve? What is the end goal? What does that look like? What are their goals, their KPIs? And what does future success look like for them? Because at the end of the day, people don't buy solutions. People don't buy products and services. People buy end results, the happily ever after. They are looking for some kind of happily ever after, and they are evaluating whether they are going to get that happily ever after with you and your company. So what kind of pressures and risks do they face? What are the risks? What are they saying? Okay, well, they're saying that they can solve our problem, but what if this happens? What if that happens? What makes them cautious? What are their objections? What could cost them politically or professionally? And, we can actually, if we preemptively think of the objections, what are they going to say? What are the reasons they're going to come up with for why this maybe isn't going to work in their mind? We can actually use our content to preemptively crush their objections. So if we know what they're likely to say, oh, my boss probably won't approve, or, oh, we're already using something and it's fine, whatever it is, there's objections that they're likely to have. Customers always have objections. So, what are those likely to be? And sometimes you may need to talk to some customers to figure out um, what are the potential objections likely to be. And then you can actually use your content to answer their questions, crush their objections in advance, so that by the time they get on the phone with you, they don't have those questions anymore. And if we really do this exercise right, we can go even deeper to the very existential question of who are they trying to become? Who are they trying to be? Um, I saw an example of this of like, it was a company that offered to take the photos from your phone and turn it into like a beautiful little flip book of all of your memories, like with your kids and family and stuff like that. So you could have like a coffee table book with all your family photos in it. And so their sort of existential thing was going from a busy mom to like kicked back and with your feet up, and you don't have to worry about anything, because they would just kind of send you these little books on subscription just based on like the photos that you were taking. Every so often a little booklet of the photos would come in the mail, so you didn't have to do anything. So you know for us, in a B2B sense, that was more like a B2C example. But, at the end of the day, your customer wants to be that kicked back, relaxed mom instead of running around with her hair on fire chasing after four kids. They want some kind of happily ever after. They want to be something. So maybe they're trying to become the recognized employee of the month. They want that pat on the back. They want that promotion. And they're not going to get that promotion if they choose the wrong vendor and they get the wrong solution and it doesn't work out. So that's something maybe that's weighing on their mind is, am I going to get to that status? Like, people buy status, even in B2B sense, we buy status. And, maybe they want to get that promotion. Maybe they want to be head of their department. So they want to make the best decisions. They want to bring in the right vendors to transform their department so that when their boss retires, they're the next one getting promoted to that position. What is it they're trying to become? Maybe they're trying to become the I don't know, the financially independent, early retired breadwinner of their family. I don't know, but really think about that. Like, what does this decision mean to your customer ultimately? Because at the end of the day, we're all human. And even, people in a B2B sense, we're not selling to companies, we're selling to people, human beings. Those human beings work in a company, but they are people, and people buy for human reasons. And, even when it comes down to the budget or whatever it is, at the very core of that are, human reasons for, down the road, what is this going to mean for my life and my career? So actually sitting down and thinking about that, like, what kind of transformation are your customers looking to achieve? And then where do they spend their time? Where do they hang out? Where do they learn? Are they reading blogs or newsletters or podcasts or YouTube channels or industry publications they trust? Are they following certain thought leaders? Are they going to luncheons or industry events? What are they doing? Where are they learning? Because when you understand like what they're paying attention to, you know where to get in front of them. And then where do they network? Are they in LinkedIn groups, Slack communities, trade associations, industry events? And where do they research? Are they using Google or Capterra or looking at peer reviews or doing analyst reports? Um, and then who do they follow? Is it thought leaders, influencers, community voices? Who is shaping their worldview? Because again, if you understand all of this, if you know that your customers love to follow certain influencers, you can, um, you just have that ability to show up as though you are reading their mind. You know what they're dealing with. You know who they follow. You're part of their world. And, that can be really powerful when it comes to trust. So, relevance, why are we doing all of that? What is that exercise about? Of really, really granularly understanding our customer? It's about relevance. And just like I was saying, it's about trust. So relevance builds trust because, say they follow a certain industry leader and you know all about what that person talks about and what they write about and the problems that they are diagnosing or solving. You're speaking their language now because you know the same things that they know. You're part of that conversation. So when you're part of that conversation, you are no longer noise, you're no longer spam, you are a friend. You're part of that conversation. The trust builds because you're somebody who's in. You're on the inside. So really understanding your customer helps you be relevant. And relevance feels like a helpful tap on the shoulder rather than a spammy weirdo. Relevance earns attention, it builds credibility, it opens the door to a real conversation. So the gap between being annoying and being helpful is almost entirely determined by relevance. The same format, the same channel, even the same message, it lands completely different, speaks, whether it's directly to the buyer's actual world. Relevant content doesn't need to sell. It earns attention simply by being useful. And, I have clients sometimes who are like super worried about sending too many emails or putting up too many LinkedIn posts. They don't want to bother anyone. But people aren't bothered by relevant content. Relevant content that helps them solve their problems is not spammy. It's something that's helpful. They're like, "Oh, good. Here's another email from this company helping me solve my problem." And I wonder what they're talking about today. Nobody complains about receiving genuinely useful information that helps them solve a real problem. So people don't hate content, they hate irrelevant content. Spam is spam because it's irrelevant. If somebody's sending you like an email about car insurance and you received like 20 million of them today, you're going to be annoyed because it's not relevant to you. You don't need that. And you're going to be pissed off. You're like, why are they sending this to me again? Because you don't need it. And, people do that because they hope that, if they send like 10,000 emails, that hopefully like 5 people will respond. So now they're just annoying 10,000 people or 9,995 people. But, the point is that when you really understand your customer, you can provide content to them that works for them, that's useful to them, that helps them solve their problem. And when you're helping them solve their problem, They want to receive your content. So, why do experts attract attention? The most followed people in an industry aren't the loudest promoters. They're the most consistently helpful ones. Buyers gravitate toward experts, not because they're trying to be sold to, but because they're trying to solve problems. If they need to solve this problem and they're trying to figure out what to do about it, and you're helping them figure out what to do about it, they're going to see you as an expert. And, a lot of times it goes kind of like this. We start out with, like, hey, I wonder, what do we need to do about this problem? We have this problem. How do we solve it? And then maybe we're thinking, oh, maybe we can do this internally. Maybe we can solve it. So we start looking for information and we start finding out, like, the nature of the problem and what is the best way to solve it. And can we solve it ourselves? So we start learning. And we go follow the people who we can learn it from, who are the experts. And then we learn things, the insights, the frameworks, the knowledge, without asking for anything in return. When we provide that insight and knowledge, people begin to follow us because they need to solve that problem. And, at the end of the day, some of those people are going to decide that this is not a problem that they can handle themselves or wish to handle themselves or have the expertise to solve themselves, but you do. And they know that because they've been following your content. They know that you know how to solve that problem. They know that you are really good at it, that you have a deep expertise in it, that you understand what to do about it, and that if they hire you, they don't have to deal with it anymore because you're going to take care of it and you're going to solve it for them. And so, and the more trust and the more confidence that they have that you're going to get that problem solved quickly, consistently, they believe, the more they believe they're going to get that desired end result from working with you, the more you can charge, because people want confidence. People want to feel confident in the decision. And, would you rather buy if you're going on an overnight backpacking trip where there's not going to be any communication with the outside world, would you rather go with a REI fancy shovel that is going to work, or would you rather take a dollar store shovel? Whatever item. But you get the idea. Like, people buy confidence. Like, people will pay $50 for the fancy shovel with all the reviews that say it's not going to break and it's going to work, and you can dig your fire pit when on your camping trip. Well, no one, there's no stores around or any interfacing with the outside world. That shovel is going to work. Whereas, yeah, you can buy a dollar store shovel and then you get out into your remote environment and go to dig your fire pit, and guess what? It breaks on the first try. And yeah, nobody wants that experience. People want to believe and trust and be confident that the solution they are choosing is going to get the desired result. And the more they believe that and the more they trust that, the more they are willing to pay. Because most of the time, because of that status level where, we want that promotion, we want a raise, we want to be seen as employee of the month, we want that pat on the back. We don't want that dollar store shovel, because if it breaks, it's on us. So they want the solution that is going to give them the confidence that this problem is going to be solved, and it's going to reflect well on them when they make that decision. So the goal is to create value, not to convince. We're not trying to be salesy weirdos. We're not trying to sell. We are trying to give people a little taste of what we do and how we help them, get them a little closer to solving their problem. Being too salesy can push people away. So, I like to kind of stick to like an 80-20 rule of content. Like 80% of the time, you're adding value, providing useful, relevant content. 20% of the time, you can make offers, invite people to a sales conversation, invite people to, book a call or opt in for something, because people know that you're not just doing this for fun, you're doing this to make money. But when most of the content is about helping them solve their problem and adding value, then they tune in because it's relevant to them and it's helpful to them. Recognition creates trust. So think about your own buying behavior. When you need a solution, you have two options. Company A, you've got a vendor you've never heard of reaching out cold, asking for 30 minutes of your time with no prior context. Or you have company B, a company whose content you've seen multiple times, whose ideas have already helped you think through a challenge. Which one are you going to choose? The choice is almost always company B, not because their pitch was better, but because familiarity has already done the work of building initial trust. So, just like why they put Coca-Colas in a movie, because it's just human nature for us that the more we see something, the more we think we like it. And the more it becomes kind of part of our world and the more we trust it. So that's part of the reason, is just it's staying top of mind, but also, becoming part of their world. And, when they know who you are, the doors open more easily. Buyers form opinions before outreach even begins. So by the time a buyer accepts your connection request or replies to your email or books a discovery call or answers the call when you actually call them or calls you back, they've already made a preliminary judgment about you. So they have to decide, first of all, they have to be aware that you exist. Then they have to start learning about you, and then they have to form an opinion about you. So they have to form an opinion about you before they can do business with you. And they have to have an opinion about whether it's even worth it to spend their time in a call with you. So if they don't think that it's worth spending half an hour of their time with you, they are not going to book a call. So first of all, they have to believe that this is going to be valuable to them. And the modern B2B buyer spends a significant amount of time in self-directed research, reading, comparing, quietly forming preferences long before they engage with any vendor. Long before any direct contact, buyers are already deciding, do I trust this company? What is my opinion about them? And your visibility and content during that silent research phase is not optional. It's where trust is either built or forfeited. If they're trying to find out if you are the right people to solve the problem, they're going to go looking to see if you have expert content on that problem, if you have case studies on that problem, if you are engaging in forums about that problem. They're going to look for all the signals, and they're going to do that oftentimes before you ever hear from them. So reduces friction. One of the most underappreciated dynamics in B2B sales is how dramatically familiarity changes the quality of first conversations. So in the first example, a cold conversation, you are explaining who you are, building credibility from scratch, overcoming skepticism before value exchange can even begin. And then the second example, a warm conversation, you continue a relationship that already exists. The buyer already trusts you, already sees your value, already knows your perspective. So when buyers already recognize you, you're not starting at zero. You're building on a foundation that your content already laid. And that changes everything about how the conversation goes. And this brings me back to years ago, I worked with a company called Inexus in the oil and gas industry. And when I started with the company, they had no marketing. They had like a 9-year-old brochure, and their website was like a PDF paste of their 9-year-old brochure. And they were purely word of mouth. So they got all of their business through referrals. And then we started doing marketing activities. We rebranded the company. We remessaged the company. So we thought back to, okay, who really are we as a company, and what are we trying to convey, and who are our customers, and what do they care about? And so we created messaging that was different than the industry. The industry was highly focused on the technical aspects of what they did. So the competitors were all about, their technical competence and their technical process and blah, blah, blah. So we positioned them as a human powered company, because what they did really well was take care of the people around their business, their customers, their employees, their vendors. And so then we created a promotional program that would push that message out into the market in different ways: live events, sponsorships, online, on the website, and consistently in different ways out across different channels and different places. And before you knew it, the conversation at the trade show, when we would talk to someone, would change from, yeah, never heard of them, to, oh yeah, I know who they are. And that's the very first step, is that they even know who you are. Then they have to form an opinion about you. So they have to have an opinion about whether you are any good, whether you're going to do what you say you're going to do, whether you really have the expertise to help them solve the problem, whether you're trustworthy. They have to form opinions about you. So giving them more opportunities to form those opinions warms up the conversation. So by the time you talk to them, the conversation is not like, let me explain like the entire history of our company to you so I can like build all of this credibility from scratch in our first conversation. But hey, you know who we are, that we're good, that we have a good reputation. Here's how we're going to help you solve the problem. Do you want to talk about that further and how that would work for you? This is why I provide live streams, is I'm helping you solve your problem a little bit each time, where you can see, how do I help people? How does Zebra help our customers solve their problems? And like letting you hop in and see how we do that week over week. So when it's time and you are able to hop in, you can learn a little bit that helps you get a little bit closer to solving your marketing problems. So, what can you do that helps to build the familiarity and reduce friction with your customers? And think of this kind of like, when you go to the supermarket and they're giving little samples. I don't know if those of us in Texas, I go to HEB on a Saturday and there's like a little sample of something on every corner. So as you walk through the mall, my mom likes to call it grazing. You're walking through the mall having little samples of different products. Well, they're not giving you a sample of cheese just because they're nice people and want you to be, have a snack. They're giving you a sample of cheese because they expect that a certain number of people are going to buy some cheese, or they're going to stop in the cheese department and shop for a while. They're not giving you a taste of cheese out of the goodness of their heart. They're giving you a taste of cheese so that you say, wow, that was a really good cheese. Let me buy some. And so that's what we're kind of doing with our content, is giving them a little sample, giving them a little taste. Hey, hey folks, this is how we help people. Um, and this is how we help you solve that problem. Would you like to see how it would work for you? So we're building familiarity. And your content works exactly the same way. You're giving them a little sample, helping them get a little bit closer to solving their problem. And those who really want to get that problem solved and don't want to try and do it themselves are going to raise their hand and reach out and say, hey, I think it's time we talked about this. And content is a sample of your expertise. Nobody wants to book a call with someone if they don't think that it's relevant. If it's not the right time, or it's not the right solution, or they don't trust you, or they don't really know what you're about. They're evaluating whether it's even worth their time to get on a call with you. So if you're trying to ask them to get on a call, but they don't see what the point is, they're not going to accept your call. The door is not going to open. So we want to be educating. We want to help them solve small problems. So, pick one small problem, help them get closer to the solution. And then provide insights, offer perspectives and frameworks they won't find anywhere else. And then create progress. Help them move a little closer to solving their problem, even incrementally. Pick a little bit of, pick one aspect of the problem and help them solve it. And in marketing, we like to kind of call this like the win gap. Give them a little win that also leaves a gap. So if you show them how to audit their system to figure out where the problems are, and then you leave them there, now they know how to audit their system. They know where all the problems are, but now they need to solve those problems. Oh, well, who are they going to get to help them solve those problems? Maybe that will be you. And then the other thing to keep in mind is most buyers are not ready to buy today. And I like to think about this as the green effect. If you had a field full of green tomatoes and you said, you know what? These tomatoes are not ripe. They're green. They're not going to be good to eat. Let's just tear them out and throw them away. I mean, that wouldn't make any sense, would it? Because if you just gave them a little love, gave them some fertilizer and some water and a little sunlight, then in a little while they're going to be ripe and red and ready to eat. So, that is what our content is doing. Our content is the fertilizer and the sunlight and the sprinkling of water that gets your tomatoes ripe and ready to eat. That you want to nurture them. They become, part of your email list or part of your LinkedIn network, or they stop by at a trade show. Now they're a green tomato. now what is important to do is nurture them. So continuing the conversation, inviting them into the conversation, and continuing to educate and give a little taste of what you do until they are ready to buy. And if you show up consistently helping them solve their problems, when it's time and when they are ready to buy, they will reach out to you. Or if your salesperson reaches out to them, they will answer the call, versus the gatekeeper. Oh, sorry, they're in a meeting right now. Oh, sorry, they're not in the office right now. Oh, can you leave a message? Can you leave a voicemail? If you want to actually get through to people, this is the gateway. So Why capture matters. If most buyers won't be ready to purchase today, if they're green tomatoes, the question becomes, how do you maintain a meaningful connection with them until they are ready to buy? The the answer requires intentional infrastructure for staying in the conversation. So the buyer enters the research phase. They are aware of the problem, but not yet ready to engage a vendor. They know they have a problem, but they don't know what to do about it yet. So they're in the research phase. They're trying to figure that out. Then they encounter valuable content. Your content earns their attention and provides genuine help. So, if you're trying to figure out how to solve XYZ problem and that client, the customer is consistently finding your content online, helping them get closer to the solution, they're going to trust you because they're going to start to see you as the expert. So when they start to see you as the expert, you earn permission to continue. Maybe they opt in for something. They maybe opt in to join your online training or to download a online catalog, or they opt into, whatever it is, they're requesting something from you that helps them solve their problem in exchange for their contact information. And then you're able to continue marketing to them. So nurture builds trust over time. Consistent, valuable communication keeps you top of mind until they're ready. So nowadays, we can even begin to nurture them before they opt in for something. So if they visit your website, or we can detect buying behavior in their research phase online when they're going around researching what it is that you do, we can actually gather that as a lead. And so before they ever download something from your website or give their contact information, we can actually get information that we can then use to be able to send nurture to them. So it could be adding them to a digital ads audience, or sending them an email, or sending them a direct mail, so that before they even need to opt in for something, they're receiving some nurture from you. Hey, hey, we help people solve this problem. So in order to get an opt-in, typically you want to create value in exchange for their contact information. So offering an online training, webinars, live on-demand learning that helps buyers develop skills or knowledge, audits and assessments, personalized diagnostic tools that surface insights specific to their situation, guides and frameworks, practical resources they'll save, reference, and share with colleagues. So if you give them a really useful guide to a problem that people in your market consistently have, here's a guide about how to solve it. Well, guess what? They're going to be really excited to get that guide because they're like, oh my God, this is exactly what I need to do. But then probably what's going to happen is they're going to get the guide and they're going to be like, oh my God, I don't have time to do this, or this is too much, or there's parts of this I don't understand. So then they're going to continue to look for information from you, and potentially they're going to reach out. So that's the win gap. You give them a win. Oh, we got the guide. Now we know what we have to do, but now we still have to do it. That's the gap. Then you've got event registrations. Maybe you've got, online events or in-person events. Companies like to do events, live events in partnership with a trade show, or like at a trade show and invite people to come from the trade show to their event, or hosting a expert panel on a particular topic, or exclusive conversations, industry roundtables. And the trick is you want to provide value first. And if the value is big enough to them, they'll give you their contact information in exchange for it. And the trick is that nurture builds trust. And it's the repeated exposure over and over, seeing you, that you become top of mind, that the trust builds, that relationship builds, and they begin to believe that, you guys really are the experts in this. And we know who you are. We know that you're good. So we have an opinion about you. And, you seem to be reliable, consistent, and professional, which helps build in our eyes would probably be a reliable partner. May or may not have heard of people. Well, what is a funnel? And so a funnel is really just a reflection of the customer journey. And, at the top of the funnel is the entire world. So, I mean, it's kind of sideways, but, the left side of the funnel in this is the entire world. Everyone on the planet is outside of this funnel. They are doing some pretty good things. Let me see. To engagement, hey, they're offering an online training, or they're offering a panel, or they're offering something. Let me go see what they have to offer. Or maybe I saw one of their LinkedIn posts and I liked it or commented on it. They begin to engage, and the trust begins to build. And over time, the trust and the relationship continue to build as more touch points happen. And eventually they are ready for a conversation, because, they have to believe that spending some time with you is going to be worth it to them. So now they're willing to have a conversation. They like what you have to say. You send them a proposal and they become a customer. So, the trust is increasing all along the way. And the purpose of marketing is to move people along in their journey with you. Multiple compound. So, we like to call this in marketing kind of like omni-channel marketing, like an omnivore, but and outreach in various different places, so that it's kind of like an effect where it's like, oh, everywhere I look, I see these guys. Your LinkedIn content, webinars and events, email nurture, direct mail, and follow up. If they kind of feel like they see you all over the place, they're going to remember who you are. They're going to remember what you do. And always comes back to relevancy. It's not about just creating noisy content or just creating a volume of content. And it can be tempting these days with AI just to create, noisy, spammy content, just because it's so easy now to produce content. But it always has to come back to the customer. What do they care about? What is the real nature of their problem? What do they think is the solution? Is that really the solution? Answering these questions for them keeps you relevant, keeping yourself in the conversation, really knowing, like, what is the conversation? Who are the thought leaders in that conversation, and then becoming one. And consistent visibility creates opportunity. So when they keep seeing you repeatedly in places where they're looking to learn and research and network, and you're there, that builds familiarity. They know who you are. They know that you're good. They know that you're reliable. They know that you're trustworthy, that you do what you say you're going to do, that it's worked for other people. That's the purpose of case studies, again, is people like to do what they see other people doing successfully. So sharing your wins. Hey, we did this for this company and we had great results. Gives people confidence. And confidence leads to conversations and pipeline. So, like I mentioned earlier, we now have access to intent data, which is basically identifying people who are in the buying research phases. So they are actively online looking around to learn about this problem or to find an appropriate company to partner with them to solve it. And we can actually now identify those folks who are looking for what you do right now and begin engaging with them before they actually have reached out. So you can begin building that trust, building that confidence and relationship, um, just to start, get that relationship started, and begin helping to shape their decision making process. So the traditional approach was to wait until the buyer, submitted a form, requested a demo, responded to an outreach. We had to wait for them to respond to be able to know that they were even in the market. Well, that's not the case anymore. We can actually identify buyers in the research phase who are actively and in the early stages of beginning to build familiarity and trust before competitors are even aware the buyer is in market. So you can actually sort of get in there and start shaping their decision making process, building that trust and building that relationship very early now to make sure that um, you are entering the conversation before they may have even formed their opinions. So it it makes it a lot easier because you were there first, and it helps you open those doors early on. So when you study the outreach that consistently generates responses, the emails that get replies, the LinkedIn messages that start real conversations, the calls that don't feel cold, the pattern is almost never what most people assume. It's really because the message was perfectly crafted. It's because the buyer already knows who you are. The best performing outreach isn't a cold call, it's not cold at all. Um, it's the final step in a longer journey of visibility, value, and trust. The message is simply the moment when a relationship that was already building becomes an explicit conversation. So, the purpose is to build that visibility, build that value, build that trust so the doors open for you more easily. The principles that separate outreach that works from outreach that gets ignored aren't complicated, but they require a shift in how you think about the entire process. So you want to start with a deep understanding of the customer. You want to make sure that you are helping them solve the problem, which makes your content relevant. It speaks to real problems and real goals, not generic pain points. And then content builds familiarity. Every piece of content is a free sample of your expertise in action. It is a little piece of cheese at the supermarket that makes them say, hey, let me get a container of this. It's familiarity that builds trust. And buyers choose companies they recognize. Recognition comes from consistent visibility. And nurture keeps you top of mind. Most buyers aren't ready today. They stay connected until they are. And trust makes outreach easier. Warm conversations convert at dramatically higher rates that you know are much higher than cold outreach. So, if they already know who you are, if they already have an opinion about you, it's gonna be easier for those doors to open for you than it is if if you're like truly in a cold situation where they don't know who you are, they don't know what you do, they don't know why they should care. You're showing them with nurture why they should care, which makes outreach easier because they already know why they should care. And the conversation starts before the outreach. Have you noticed buyers responding differently after seeing your content multiple times? If they've seen you, if they know what you do, if they know your content, they know what kind of problems you solve, you know, it's because you've been showing up consistently, helping them solve their problems. So visibility changes the entire dynamic of outreach. The companies winning pipeline today aren't just better at writing emails, they're better at being known, being helpful, being experts, being thought leaders, and being present before the conversation even starts. So, if you would like to see how you can improve your trust building and your relationship building at your company, drop the word trust in the comments and I will let you know how we can hop on a call together and talk about, how this could work for your company or how you could maybe close this gap for your business and provide a more complete nurture for the people in your audience and your market to help you open more doors. And typically, they used to say that we needed 6 to 8 touch points before a B2B buyer is ready to engage. But, in today's really busy online environment and marketing environment, that number in some cases may be more like 12 to 20. So, really staying consistent and having a system for this is important. And then 50%, 57% um, uh, is like how far the customers typically are through the decision making process before they actually reach out to a vendor. So, they may have already made their decision before they even reach out to you. They've been online, they've read the case studies on your website, they've read the blogs, they've read talk to their friends, all of the things. I want to hop on a call with you if you think that it's worth their time. So they've already, by the time if they hop on a call with you, they've decided, they've made an opinion about whether it's worth their time. And, they're going to do that by, they want to make that decision on their own before they actually have to talk with you, obviously, because, they don't want to waste their time if it's not worth it. So 3 times is the amount that your response rate is likely to increase when you have warm outreach to familiar prospects versus cold outreach to unknown contacts. So it's just gonna be much easier if you have a consistent system to make sure you have a plan to make sure that those warm touch points are happening that lead to pipeline, that lead to booked calls, that lead to closed deals. It's not going to be helpful to you if you're getting doors slammed in your face or doors that are just not opening for you. So especially in a B2B environment where we may have long sales cycles, showing up and adding value and doing that consistently is essential. So that is what I will leave you with today. And I hope this has been a helpful conversation for you. And definitely start thinking about What is it that you can offer? What is it that who is your customer, and what do they care about? And how can you ensure that you are showing up for them consistently, helping them solve their problems, being the expert, and building that trust? Awesome. So, if this has been a helpful conversation for you, drop the word trust in the comments if you would like to hop on a call and talk about how to improve your touch points or help improve your nurture. And I will be live here every Wednesday at 11 a.m. And would love for you to hop on next week. We'll see you next week. Again, my name is Laura Camrath with Zebra Marketing, and we help companies in the B2B space to who may have incredible products and services to take advantage of the incredible new AI and automation that's available to us today, so they can have digital marketing systems for consistent, predictable sales and hockey stick growth. All right. So if this has been a helpful conversation for you, please do like, drop a comment, share it with your network if there is someone who you think would benefit from this conversation. It just helps us engage better as a community. And I look forward to seeing you next week.